I was born premature, and I had incontinence from the day I was born. It was 55 years ago, so they didn't really know what to do with babies back then. So my mom would make little tools out of soap and have to dig out, because I was impacted. And so it's really been a lifelong problem, and not one that is really that fun to discuss with people. But by the time I was 28, I had cancer 1B right above my rectum, and got past that. And then when I was about like 52, I had a complete metabolic breakdown. And it makes me laugh because you hear those videos where you hear people, I was doing the wheatgrass, and I was doing the organic and skin brushing and keto and vegan and, air baths and cold water plunges and, acupuncture, massage, because I couldn't eat anything. Like, I couldn't eat gluten, I couldn't eat nuts, I couldn't eat bread. I couldn't, the list just kept getting more narrow and more narrow. And I used to laugh and say I was on the air diet because that's about the only thing I could eat at the time. And I was having really severe rashes, and went to all kinds of doctors, and, I got thin shamed. I got accused of being a drug-seeking, somebody who was maybe promiscuous in their youth, and I was seeking drugs because I was so thin at the time. So, I just couldn't find any answers, and I would end up in the emergency room, and I would be trembling because it would have been so long since I ate. I get a little emotional. So, I just kept hearing the word meditate, and I didn't know anything about meditation. My background is Christian background, so I heard Wayne Dyer say something, like he quotes somebody that says, if the night wakes you up, get up to see what it has to say. So I just said, not knowing anything, I'm just going to get up in the middle I'm going to hang my robe on the door and get up in the middle of the night and just meditate. So I would hang my robe on the door, and I would wake up 111, 222, 1234, 1234, and I would just get up and I would go in the living room and just lay down, on my, just with my face down, and I started to really have some interesting experiences. And so happenstance, synchronicity, somebody told me about Dr. Joe. So I wasn't doing his meditation, but I started to really read, and I probably watched every YouTube video that was on YouTube. And so finally, January 2nd of 2019, I started the progressive workshop, and I started getting up and doing Dr. Joe's meditations at 3:40 to 4:15 every morning. And during that time, I realized that, something interesting, I didn't have any memories before 9 years old, and I just thought I had a poor memory. I didn't know. And both my parents have passed away, and so doing the meditations, I realized that I had suppressed a memory of being molested from 4 to 9. And I was so surprised. Like, it literally, how I found out is I had a vision, and it was like on a reel-to-reel movie where, I saw what happened to me, but literally there was no charge. Like, I didn't have an emotional charge, but it explained to me why I was having all of this anxiety. And what I love so much about Dr. Joe's work is this is my interpretation of what he says. We don't have to go digging up bones, meaning, I didn't feel like I needed to go excavate what happened to me or talk to the person who did it, or, I just had the awareness, and I didn't even have to name what was coming up on the inside of me because of the freedom of Dr. Joe's teaching. So, from January 2nd to Niagara Falls, I had so much revelations on, why I was the way that I was. And I really was so shocked that I couldn't even say molested in the beginning. I would say a victim, or I was abused, or, but I could just really tell that, I was beginning to get free, and the incontinence and the anxiety and the not being able to eat food and all that was just a safety mechanism and a control mechanism. And, it was just running its course. My body couldn't take it anymore. I would eat and not run and not sleep and, on the air diet. And so anyway, so fast forward to Niagara Falls, and I didn't know how the events were at all. In Niagara Falls, it was a lot of people. And so for the first 3 days, I really hated it. I was like, I don't like Dr. Joe. I don't like this work. I don't want to go home. It's horrible. Like I'm uncomfortable. I can't shut my mind up. And so on Thursday, I got to have the heart rate monitor. And I think it was the walking meditation that day. Might have been Thursday or Friday, but anyway, I had the heart rate monitor on, and I did the walking meditation. And for me as a Christian, snakes are a bad thing. Like literally, the snake was in the garden and blah, blah, blah. And so when I was reading the book and listening to people I thought it was a metaphorical snake, well, during the walking meditation, I had the snake. I became very aware of the coiled snake in my first center, and it began to do this during the walking meditation. And I was so alarmed because I thought it was metaphorical. I didn't realize it was like a real energy. And so I had to go as far away as I could from people. I ended up back by a dumpster, and I was trying to stop a freight train. Like I was screaming and I was crying and I was confused and I was excited and I didn't even know what to do. So anyway, needless to say, I had this freight train of energy come out of my first center, up in my second center, up in my third center, exploded in my heart, all the way up, out the top of my head. And I mean, I could not hug people. Like my heart, for the first time in my life, it was blown open, and everybody was so beautiful to me. I ran into Dr. Carla on the bridge, and I didn't know that, I didn't make the connection. And I said, I saw you do the breath work on the stage, and I want that. And, so she began to explain to me what she does with the breath work. And, she says, and now that I've had more of Dr. Joe's teaching, he says too that, you go home from the heart. So anyway, the rest of the Niagara Falls, I went for it. I saw those people on the stage. I saw them do the breath work. My heart was open. And I pulled that energy up from that was stored in my first and second center, and I just, I was going for it. And so on Friday of Niagara Falls, I had this fractal cross, and it was like way far away. And I kind of had to throw the baby out with the bathwater with the Christianity a little bit, because I'd been hurt over some things, and I still love the divine, and I still thought Jesus was the reason for the season, but I had to put some of it away. So anyway, I'm just because of the awakening, and all of a sudden I look up and there's this fractal cross, and it's like, I really didn't know what fractals were. I was like, da, 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 and it backed up, and it was pulsing like a heartbeat, and it backed up, and it came rushing at me at the speed of light, and it blew up in my heart. And I mean, my whole being, there was density in my heart, and I think it was like protection. It just blew my heart wide open, like wide open. So that was my other experience. And then on Friday and Saturday, I got the 2 coins that I got that day were wholeness and wholeness. And so I had signed up for a healing, but I didn't think I was going to get one. And if I got one, I was thinking about giving it to my friend because I felt like, I can manage my situation. And my situation at that time was, and, this is not like the best conversation, but I literally hadn't gone to the bathroom normally in 2 years. Like I had to take, laxatives didn't even work. So I literally had to do a very hot water colonic to myself every day, and it took 2 hours. So if we had a meditation at, if I was to be downstairs at 3:30, I had to get up at 1:30. Or if we had to be there at 6, I had to get up at 4. I couldn't have a roommate. Very hard for me to travel. So it was but I felt like I could manage it, and as long as I could keep doing the work, maybe I didn't feel worthy, basically, of getting a healing. So anyway, I got the wholeness coin, and the day before I got the coin, one of the girls in my meditation, or in my group, said, I just had a vision of you with white rose petals all around your face. And so I didn't think anything of it. So I got the healing coin, and it also said wholeness. So I was like, okay, 3 times the charm. I must be meant to get this, this healing. So I'm going to go for it. And so I knew that I just felt like I was destined to have an interaction with the blue beings. I would say they were divine, angelic. I don't know, whatever people want to say that they were. But I knew that I was destined to have an interaction with them. And I just was really afraid that my analytical mind was so strong that I wouldn't be able to do it. So I was like, I'm not going to eat and I'm not going to sleep very much because Dr. Joe says, that if you're tired and you're goofy, that's when the mystical can happen. So Saturday night I slept just very little, and Sunday didn't eat. So I had my healing on Sunday, and I go into the healing room, and there's white rose petals all over the floor. And so I just, I knew. And so when you get in that room, like, the power is so strong in there. And Dr. Joe takes such good care of getting us ready. Like, my whole body was vibrating, So we go into the healing, and I'm really like, ooh, like, I don't know, will I be able to, if the blue beings, if they show up, will I be afraid? And so this just shows you how much the divine takes care of us. So I get in there, and right away, like, my body I felt like it was bouncing like a basketball off the ground, and all of a sudden this curtain appeared, and it was like a gold shimmering curtain with diamond flecks in it. And these blue hands come out from behind the curtain, and they start working on me. And I knew that it was because I had fear. And so I said, I surrender. Like, I'm going to surrender. So they came out from the curtain. And I don't know if you've ever seen the cartoon where they take somebody by the ankle and they lift them up, and their head is hanging down and all the coins fall out of their pocket. So there were 2 of them, and they picked me up and they started shaking me. And like, I could not duplicate the positions that my body was in. Literally at one point I was on my tailbone, and my head was all the way back, and my legs were up in the air, and they started pulling what looked like intestines out of my body. And I said to them, are you kidding me? You're going to pull that out of me now in front of all these people? And they, they're very to the point. They said, the people's eyes, or how'd they say, their eyes are closed, you're fine. And they just kept pulling and pulling and pulling him. And it was painful, it was painful because that was stuff that had been in there for a really long time. So then, they threw me onto my right hip, and I was literally balancing on a spot on my hip about that big up in the air, and my arms were, and they started taking a shunt, and they were jabbing it into my kidney. And I said, are you kidding me? What are you doing? That hurts. And they said, your kidneys function slow. And so then they whipped me around like a rag doll, and they did the same thing to the other side. And I'm a marathon runner, so I had been suffering with an encapsulated toe joint that I didn't even think about. And so they said, point your toe as hard as you can. So I pointed my toe as hard as I could, And the energy that was in that toe joint shot up into my calf, and my foot contorted to the side like this. And I don't even know how I did it. I don't know how my ankle bone didn't break. And all the energy went up into my calf, and they reached in and they grabbed it out of there. I mean, and they shook me around a few more times. And, you know, this is like, I don't know how long. It's not that long. And they gave me the once over, the Blue Man Group once over. And so after that, I literally felt like I was hollow inside. And so there was a woman who was, you know, one of the healers. I asked her if she would hold me. Like I just needed like physical touch. And so she held me. And the interesting thing is I went through, this sounds weird, but I went through a wormhole. And you know how Dr. Joe has the timeline, you know, like your past, your present, and your future, and then he flips it up like this? I became very aware that now is past and future is now. And so I went through this portal back to when I was actually in my mother's womb. And by this woman holding me, it like provided this glorious refilling of energy. And it took me all the way up to the present moment. And as a matter of fact, you know, she and I have become friends. She found me after the group, and, you know, she was witness to like some of the positions that I was put in. She was like, oh my gosh, this is what she said. She said she was with her mother when her mother passed away, and how I was struggling and the groans that I was making and the way my hands were was like when her mother died. And I know that the old self died. You know, I know the old self died and the new person was born. And so anyway, I forgot one thing. The day when I had the heart rate monitor on, the day before or 2 days before my healing, it was right before I woke up, and my dad, who died in 2008, came to visit me, and in my hotel room, and he was standing beside my bed, and he used to call me Poopsie, and he said, Poopsie. He said, if I had known what had happened to you, I would have protected you. He said, but I didn't know, and I want you to know your mom and I are orchestrating your healing. So anyway, I have the healing. I go home for 3 days. I literally, like when my husband would come to hug me, I would be like, ooh, because I had this energy emoting, like my pupils were dilated, and I was like, gag, 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 gag. And I didn't have very good words. But on the 3rd day, I started to have normal bowel functions. And it's never happened in my life. I have never in my entire life been able to not have incontinence without aid. And since Niagara Falls, no problem. I can eat pizza, I can eat cheese, I can eat nuts, I can eat gluten. Now I don't, but I tried all those things when I got home. Like, you know, I said, oh, I can't have cheese, it'll slow my log ride down, is what I would call my colon, a log ride. And so I have no problems, like zero problems. So what happened to me, I'm sorry this is so long, but okay, so what happened to me is I came home so committed to the breath work. And the beings began to work on me at home. So I still have been getting up between 3:40 and 4:15. I did all of 2019, and I'm still doing every day into 2020. They followed me home, and they began to work on me at home. Sometimes they're kind of more crystal color than blue. In the beginning, they were blue, but they began to talk to me about the breath work and how important that is. And so sometimes they will actually blow on my frontal lobe and cool my frontal lobe down, because I know I was in such survival mode from the day I was born, obviously, or maybe even before. And sometimes they would work on my kidney, and sometimes they would tell me what to do. They would say, now I want you to, go inside your kidney, and they would give me instruction. And so, my analytical mind one morning was just thinking like, I wonder if God does breath work. And I heard this booming voice said, I am breath. And it was like, every one of my cells was like zzz, going and like, and then all of a sudden I felt like I was breathed, like the universe breathes and I was breathing, with the divine was breathing. And I realized like how important the breath work, and they began to explain to me, in combination with things that Dr. Joe said and Dr. Carla said, that when we do the breath work, you're literally creating space for the divine. And wherever you have like density, that you literally can bring that breath into that density and blow that density out. And so I have had so many unbelievable experiences with the breath work and the meditation. And for me, the healing is of biblical proportion. It's the parting of the Red Sea, because I'm 55 and I suppressed a memory for 51 years. And I've never in my life had normal bowel function, and I have that now. And not only that, I had such an edge to me, and a lot of times I could be in love, but the hard edge would come up, and I didn't like it, and I knew it wasn't who I wanted to be, but I had no idea of why that was, and so all of those barriers got broken down. But I have two more things I want to say. One is, after I got home, I invested in myself and did the report that you get, and you have a 1 hour consultation with Dr. Carla. She was so helpful to me. But God's so good, or the divine's so good, or source is so good, is that when I had the heart rate monitor, my mystical experiences were recorded on it. And so when you get home and you've had something like that, you're like, did I make that up? Like, could this really be, And so when I had the awakening during the walking meditation, so when I got the report, it was several weeks before I talked to her, I thought, my heart must be in horrible shape, because I didn't understand. So I had my consultation with her. So when I had the awakening, you could see and then, when we did another meditation, you could see. And then she said, this is when you're sleeping and something happened here right before you woke up. It was my dad coming to visit, was on there. So anyway, for me, the breath work and Dr. Joe's work is more important than sleep. It's more important than food. It has so changed my life. And so you fast forward. Side note, also not a popular thing to talk about. I'm 55, I'm postmenopausal. With the breath work, I have become when you're menopausal, things change, right? And I would watch Dr. Joe and I'm like, he looks younger. Like when I look at him and like, what the bleep, and I look at him, and he looks younger and I want that. That's what I want. So as a side benefit, an unintended consequence, in America, we have a saying, get your head out of your ass. It's not a very nice thing to say, but literally my head was in my ass because I was never able to get the energy here. It was literally my head. Okay. So normal bowel function, beginning to, continually day after day, sometimes twice a day, pulling the breath into my first three centers. Unintended consequence, things started to bloom in my first three centers, like before menopause, and that's about as much as I'll go into it. So those females who, we know what we know happens, unintended consequence, it's marvelous. So I come to Munich. I haven't had a rash since I started doing the Dr. Joe work, and I break out in a horrible rash, like terrible, terrible rash. And I was like, what the HE double hockey sticks? Like the minute I get to Germany, I call my husband, I made a mistake, I want to come home. So I knew something big was going to happen. And, my husband's very used to my stories about, I saw this and I went there. But this was like another walking meditation. And when I always hated the sound of my voice. Like when I would hear myself, I had a small TV show, when I hear myself on my TV show, or I would do an interview, I hated the way my voice sounded. And I didn't really think much about it, but it came to me yesterday. When you've been victimized and you tell people and they don't do anything, you begin to distrust the sound of your own voice. So, anyway, the rash broke out in my fifth center. And this sounds like it's bad, but it's really good what happened to me. So I'm on the walking meditation, and for me, the walking meditation started in Niagara. So I'm on the walking meditation, and all of a sudden, like this little room right here in my fifth center goes out like that. And it's like it was pressurized, and the lid of it opened like, and it opened up, and the most rancid air came out of it and came out of my mouth, and it was literally a mist that came out of my mouth, and it was terrible. And I was like, wow, that's weird, and I know it's because my voice was shut off. I mean, the people that I told what was happening to me, didn't have the tools or weren't able. It was a different time. And so I began to stifle my own voice. So anyway, I was like, yay, I had another, I was marching and I was stomping and I was crying and I was so happy, yay, maybe now I'll like my voice and this is wonderful. And so anyway, I just, again, I was like, I felt like my fifth center, all of the cells were synchronized, like zzz, 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 zzz. So we do the meditation, and, I'm excited because I'm going to, do another Dr. Joe meditation. During that meditation, all of a sudden, it looked like a pewter sunflower. And somehow it had a mechanical opening. It was like a kind of like a trick toy box or something. It opened and it went zzz, like that. And a scarab came out of it and went up, and it went in my nose, and it went up my sixth, up my seventh, and out the top of my head. And I knew that my temple, my voice had been resurrected. It was amazing. And then it happened on my left ovary. Sunflower, zzz, scarab came out. Doo, 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 doo. It didn't go inside me, but it went up and out. And so I know that the rash for me represents, it's shameful. You feel embarrassed. And I know for me that the shame that was locked in my fifth center has been resurrected. So I'm so thankful for this work, and I'm so thankful for Dr. Joe, and I'm so thankful for the people here that, are so helpful with the breath, Dr. Carla, the environment. I mean, it literally, I feel like I'm living a biblical parting of the Red Sea, part James Cameron, sci-fi, Avatar, divine-filled life as a result of the work that I'm doing.